This is the old international airport of Manila. It was, I think, the first international airport in Asia. And Makati Avenue and Ayala Avenue were the two runways, I guess.
So
that
this road here was the international runway?
Absolutely, yeah. And then, Makati then obviously got developed, but we kept it as I guess, as a fitting symbol, I guess, of what this area used to be.
So as we walk down what used to be a runway and one of the first international airports in Asia, just describe to us, back in the 1940s when the decision was made to develop this area, what was actually here?
There was very little. Actually, for the first part of the 1900s, there was really very little. It was only... Yes, and it was really only in the 1940s and 50s that the master planning began, and we started laying out the roads and inviting investors to come into the area.
Enormously risky.
Very risky at the time, but there was just a huge leap of faith from some of the original investors to come into this area. The first families that went into the residential areas, into the villages, and the first investors here, they've done extremely well as a result of that leap of faith. But yes, at that time it was risky. The center of gravity was actually in the old Chinatown of Manila, and so this was
a massive
how
far away?
Well, it's not long from a distance point of view, but it's, put it this way, it's right on the other side of the city. Obviously, commerce moved along the river, the Pasig River at the time, and that's where the center of commerce was throughout the history of Manila. So this was basically moving to the suburbs.
Do you think it's fair to say that the land component of Ayala was the ingredient that really stoked the growth of this company?
Yeah, the massive value creation took place right after the Second World War. I think a lot of it had to do with the land around Makati. Basically, it was farmland, so imagine the value creation of farmland really becoming the center of gravity for the business center, for hotels, for residential. And I think from that, the cash flow started improving again after the war, and then we parlayed that into a whole range of different industries that have continued to this day.
One word that you'll both be well aware of that is associated with the Philippines is corruption, rightly or wrongly. Neither of you have mentioned it. How big a problem is it?
Well, I think there has been a history. As Fernando mentioned earlier, we've had a bumpy ride as a country. All I can say, and I think we see this together, is that there has never been as much rigor and seriousness on the part of this government in addressing the corruption issue as we have seen under the term of this current president.
But corruption, would you agree, is endemic in the Philippines, and it is going to take perhaps a generation for it to be brought under control? Is that a fair comment?
It takes time. It takes time, and it depends in what particular area. We've had the benefit as a company to have been operating for many years in this country. We've built relationships. We've operated in many parts of the country, and we have not experienced some of the problems that people claim that they might have experienced. But overall, you do see corruption in many of the countries in Asia and throughout the world, and you want to see a government that leads by example and works on improving the situation. It's hard to eliminate corruption completely in any country, but you want to see improvement, and certainly this government is showing that it will go after corruption and it will improve that particular condition in the country.
Maybe just to add to what Fernando's saying, if you look at any development equation, as you move up the per capita GNP curve, people get more educated, standards move up, governance moves up, corruption indexes also tend to fall. I have absolutely no doubt that as the Philippines continues its fairly sharp climb now up the GNP curve, and as people start to earn more, as people start to get better educated, as people start to demand higher levels of governance, invariably the whole corruption issue also begins to decline.
The Chief Justice has been impeached on charges of corruption. The former president is facing electoral fraud accusations. Her predecessor spent time in prison for charges including economic plunder.
Right.
There is a mountain to climb here, isn't there?
Yeah, it is. The challenge is there, but actually it all boils down to leadership. And I think we have a current president and his cabinet who've basically said we have to turn a new corner on the governance front. And I think everything that they've done up to now is basically setting a whole new bar and a whole new standard, and they are basically walking the talk.
Ferdinand E. Marcos ng Batak,
we see now the nation we aspire to be, which is rising slowly in our land. As one nation with one faith and with the world looking at us, let us then continue on with this majestic task.
The Marcos years were marked by widespread corruption and cronyism, obviously. How did your company, to your knowledge, navigate those years, stay out of being compromised?
Well, I think, number one, we've had a long tradition in the country, and there's never been an engagement with the political front. That's number one. Number two, we had a number of foreign partners. I think to a certain extent that made us a little bit immune from some of the changes that were taking place on the industry front and the economic front. That having been said, there were times when we were selling one lot a month in our real estate company. That's one lot a month. That's nothing. And so financially it was quite demanding. I think it was less the political issues at the time, but also the economic forces that were really at their worst. And so managing a company for survival as opposed to growth was the norm then. And those were some of the challenges that he faced while staying away from the political turmoil that was beginning to take place.
Talking about politics, your parents both marched in 1986 in the anti-Marcos, the People Power Revolution, which led to his ouster. That was a very political statement by them, wasn't it?
It was, but there was a general feeling, and I was here at that time, and I spent a lot of time also with my parents and with that whole political movement. Really, everyone felt in the country that it was a time for change. We needed new political leadership, and we needed democracy back in the country for the country to survive. It was basically survival mode. And the business community had traditionally basically focused on business. I think that was the one time that everyone felt they had to step forward and make a statement.
You're a very keen athlete, you're a triathlete, you're a marathon runner. You had an incident a few weeks ago. What happened?